This podcast contains potentially sensitive topics, including strong language, drug use, sex trafficking, and other conditions of human suffering. Listener discretion is advised.
I remember the first time that it happened, there was a thunderstorm. I'm hearing this thunder and lightning, and I'm scared. So I run out to the living room crying, and he's on the couch watching cartoons. So he says, come lay down with me. All night, I remember I kept pushing my hand away, or just, I couldn't sleep. I was tossing and turning because he was bothering me and touched me inappropriately. I felt like he was safe. I came to him for comfort, and I didn't know how to respond to that. So I just, brushed it off.
Yeah. And again, you were
7
years old.
7.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rex Holbein, and welcome to You Know Me Now, a podcast conversation that strives to amplify the unheard voices in our community. For the past 12 years, I have met and spent a great deal of time with thousands of folks living homeless. Through those conversations and friendships, I learned how destructive and baseless the dehumanizing effects of the negative stereotype are against ordinary people who are just like you and me. In these episodes, I want to remind all of our listeners that the folks who share here do so with a great deal of vulnerability and courage. They share a common hope that by giving all of us a window into their world, they are opening an increased level of awareness, understanding, and connection within our own community.
Well, my mom was the single mom of 6 for a long time. Well, she wasn't exactly a single mom. She had a husband that just was a succubus, basically, and beat her. Those are my earliest memories, was hiding in a motel room with my brothers. And we knew he was going to find us. It was just a matter of time, before he, came through the door and started beating on my mom. I remember hiding in the bathroom, terrified with my brothers, just crying, wanting to do something, but feeling totally helpless.
We want to begin this episode by asking a really big question. With all the suffering, all the helplessness and fear felt, as expressed by Dene and others living on our streets, why have we not ended homelessness? Now, beyond what the solutions need to be, whatever combination of more housing, more mental health, more drug rehab, more job training, and whatever else more is needed, why haven't we made it happen? Could it be that we are only seeing the forest, and because of it, genuinely missing the trees? Are we so overwhelmed by the larger issue of homelessness that we are truly missing the person going through it? When folks living inside discuss homelessness among each other, the conversation often ends up being about how, quote, the issue, unquote, affects them or their neighborhood. To put it directly, what impacts the lives of the housed is what gets talked about when discussing the unhoused. Now, that list includes the piling up of garbage, drug use, loss of park use, taxes, panhandling, right down to how the homeless smell and look on public transit. And because many people living inside are frankly tired of it, or overwhelmed by it, or even angry over it, often the knee-jerk reaction is to want all of it, the whole issue, to just go away. As community, we then support or quietly consent, while the city erects chain link fencing around areas that were providing cover from the rain for those without shelter. We are okay with hostile architecture installed that prevents people from being able to sleep on benches where they were able to be off the ground. We are put off when we see folks hiding in the bushes or back alleys, publicly going to the bathroom, but we don't demand public bathrooms and garbage pickup for those without a place to live. And we turn away when sweeps are conducted, not seeing the lives being uprooted. Despite these types of actions, as well as the efforts to bring programs and services, the issue not only persists, it is getting worse. We have to ask ourselves, really, why is that? What are we missing here? Is only seeing the issue of homelessness and its effect on us, the housed, part of the problem? Would our programs and services change if we changed how we see the issue? Meaning, if we start to see the person actually suffering through homelessness. Today we have the sincere pleasure of talking with Dene. If you listened to our last episode titled The Sweep, you already know her voice. For this recording, we started our conversation with Dene asking about her early childhood and the unstable home life she was exposed to while her mother struggled to provide.
At this point, she only had 4 of us. And then she got with this other guy and had 2 more kids. And this other guy was just an alcoholic loser, basically. I was sexually abused from the time I was 7 to the time I was 12 by him. And came out about it, and nobody believed me.
Including your mom?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to go to court, but, being 12 years old, being told I'm wrong, and having to fight in a courtroom was not exactly ideal. So I chose not to.
I'm so sorry about that. That's horrible.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's really common, actually,
How do you know it's common? Do you have friends?
A lot of women that I know that are homeless, they have experienced very similar experience, things like, and a really common thing for mothers to do is not believe their children when they tell them that, because they don't want to believe that they put their child in that position, I think. How I could never do that to my kid, they have to be lying, basically, is what I think it is. And doesn't excuse it, but it's nonetheless that seems like the most reasonable, if there is one, explanation for that.
When I first met Dene about 7 years ago, she was cruising down University Avenue on her skateboard with a sketchbook. She was just 19 years old and wonderfully full of ideas. Vibrant, really. I didn't know back then, when I first met her, that she was homeless. It hadn't visibly, physically taken from her yet. There was no way for me to know how difficult her life had already been.
Well, I was a problem child, I acted out, but a lot of it was because of being sexually abused, and I felt like I wasn't getting the attention that I needed. And I was scared, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't understand that it was something that was wrong at that age. Because at that time, your body tells you one thing, that this feels good, right? But your mind tells you that it's wrong.
Something's not right about this.
Yeah. So there comes a point where you get confused and almost scared because you don't want to be in trouble. And a lot of people, the children that go through that, they don't even talk about it.
Dene quickly figured out she could manipulate the situation by being rebellious and difficult. Deep underneath it all, she felt completely betrayed by the adults in her life.
I knew I could get away with it because he had a special thing for me or whatever. So I could act out and not get my ass beat, basically, is what it came down to. But my brothers, he was really mean to. He threw one of my brothers down the stairs by his hair. He was just a bad guy. My mom broke up with him, or he broke up with her about 6 months after I got kicked out. Probably because he didn't have a little girl to fuck with anymore. And I was allowed to come back, but I didn't want to at that point. I felt betrayed.
Yeah, and how old were you?
I was 12, almost 13.
And when you say kicked out,
Like
where,
my mom.
where do you go at 12 or 13 years old when you're kicked out?
I went to a bridge. I found a bridge, and there was an old couple, alcoholic couple, that took me in. And there was a guy, his name was Todd. So immediately I was like, Uncle Todd, and this guy kept me safe, We had to share a blanket, but it wasn't inappropriate. He was a good, comforting, figure in my life for a little bit.
He was looking out for you.
Yeah. And I felt safe because he never tried anything like that, so I felt safe for once.
I'm curious what your mom would say now about knowing or being told that you were sexually abused. Have you had that conversation with her?
I've tried. I don't think that she's ready to talk about it. Because I've tried. I want closure, and I want her to acknowledge what I've been through and know that it's not her fault. Know that I don't blame her, that I love her, and that, things happen, but not to just brush it off, acknowledge that happened and give me a chance to, redeem myself, essentially, because there was a lot of, I struggled with drug addiction for a long time because of what I'd been through, and so I was very selfish.
It sounds like surviving, not being selfish.
Well, yeah, but in a way, drug addiction is, the people that use drugs are very selfish people. They don't care about how they affect people around them. You could be torturing your family members and loved ones and not even give a shit. So,
is that them, or is that the drugs doing it?
It's the drugs.
Yeah. But that's who they become because of it.
And I think that the feelings about that, the regret, the embarrassment, the self-loathing feeling that you get from knowing that you treat people who really care about you so poorly is enough to keep somebody stuck in addiction,
Wow.
I regret a lot of things that I've done.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's something I haven't heard before, and I really appreciate it because it explains the load that a person's carrying that's gone through drug addiction, and if they've treated other people poorly, that they're still carrying the memories of that.
Yeah, it's never brushed off. It's very much remembered, and I've had. It's funny because I have friends that have struggled with addiction as well, and they've done something to screw me over, and felt so guilty that they come out and tell me, and I think that really goes to show that, a lot of people have really negative feelings towards drug addicts because they don't understand where they're coming from, but we're not totally heartless, these people that, they're out stealing and destroying people's properties and all this stuff. They're doing that to feed their addiction, and I don't think that that's excusable by any means. But I think that if we can try to understand where it comes from, we might be able to solve the problem.
And if we were to back up one step even from there, which is why did they take drugs in the first place? A lot of women that that are out on the street have been sexually abused.
And men.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that's a common story that
Very common.
that drug addiction follows that. And I know when I hear that, like my heart just goes out to you. I think, again, I don't want to like say, oh, then we shouldn't be bothered by drug addiction and the consequences of it. But like, I'm trying to find the right words, but it's almost like I want to give you a free pass on life, knowing what you went through during that time. That sounds horrific, and it explains, to me, it explains drug addiction.
Yeah. Well, I look at that and then I hear about, for example, like a single mother who struggled with addiction that got clean, right, for their child, like my mom did. As soon as she struggled with addiction when she was young, and as soon as she got pregnant with me at 16, she quit. And my mom's story is inspirational to me because she's by far the strongest woman I know, by any means. And everything that I've said about my mom so far, it's not to say that she's a bad woman. She's a very wonderful woman, and she works very hard. She worked 3 jobs at a time. That's mostly why she couldn't pay attention to what was going on with me, because she was always working,
Yeah.
She busted her ass for us.
Yeah.
It's hard to provide for 6 kids on your own,
Yeah. Especially if you are also receiving abuse from your partner.
Yeah, exactly. And he was taking money and using it for alcohol and his video games, and it was just, he didn't put in anything. He was just taking from us, and my mom, no matter what, she had to get up every morning. She has degenerative disc disease. 2 in her neck, discs in her neck, and 3 in her lower back that bursted. And so her spine was essentially collapsing on itself, and it's extremely painful. She was prescribed a bunch of Oxycontin, and to this day she still has to take them, but there was a long stretch of time where she could not get out of bed. So we were really struggling for money, and I remember my brother told me he was breaking into people's lockers during lunch and stealing their electronics to go sell them at the pawn shop so that he could provide money for us.
Wow.
And all of my siblings, out of all of them, I'm the only one that struggles with drug addiction. All of them have learned from me, I guess, not to be so weak, in a sense.
Is that how you see it, being weak?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think that I've been through that I just don't even know how I could still be sane. But I think that drug addiction is just a cop-out, It's a way to escape the pain and the world around you. And it's unfortunate. I'm so grateful to have a mother that was willing to work so hard for me and for my brothers, and she struggles with pain every day and still manages to get out of bed and work her ass off. My stepdad told me that any job opening up there, my mom's on it, She's still working multiple jobs,
Wow.
And she doesn't even have to. No matter what, she's strong. She's like a superwoman of sorts to me.
Dene's real biological father left the family as soon as he found out that Dene's mother was pregnant with Dene. He went to the Philippines, remarried, had more children there, and returned to the States with his new wife and kids. As often is the case, it's complicated.
So I was kind of a black sheep as far as my dad's side was concerned. I was not treated the same as my brothers, always kind of outcasted because I wasn't, my parents had me out of wedlock.
How did you have the wherewithal at 12 to be able to handle that? Or had it been that there'd just been enough shit up to that point that this was just another step?
Yeah, pretty much. I wanted out. I was having problems at school because I was wouldn't sleep at night because of my night terrors and because I was being sexually abused. I didn't get enough sleep. So during school, I'd fall asleep. So I was super behind. My mathematical skills are so horrendous. I truly believe that I have the skills of mathematical skills of a fourth grader. I'm that far behind.
Well, you just didn't get the education.
Yeah. After sleeping through enough school, I didn't have the knowledge to move forward with, my education, and I got frustrated and just gave up.
So you quit school.
Yeah.
It's common knowledge that stress reduces the ability for good decision making. We've all experienced that. But chronic stress, that Dene experienced from the age of 7, compounds the situation by creating tunnel vision, reducing the number of options to make decisions from. Dene was trapped. There was no safety at home, and on the street, being a very young woman, she was extremely vulnerable.
So from 12 on, it was just like I was stuck in this weird meth ring, like sex ring, like basically. And I didn't even realize what was going on. I was basically being sold for meth and didn't realize it for a few years before I got out of that. The guy that was operating this whole ring went to prison. Yeah, so by the time I got out of that, I was about 14.
How is it that you were unaware that you were in a sex ring between 12 and 14? I mean, was this something...
Because they make you think that it's something you want. They make you think that it's your idea. And...
Like, I don't. Like, give me an example.
Like, introduce you to somebody and be like, yeah, he's really cute, right? You like him, yeah? Yeah, come on, you like him, kind of thing. And then,
So...
exchange would happen, and he'd take off with me and then abandon me somewhere. And then I would go back to the original person I was with and do it all over again.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, I know, that you wouldn't be aware of something like that, but it's being that young, it's kind of hard to understand where people's motivation comes from, I think. I had already been exposed to sexual abuse, so it was the norm at this point.
Yeah.
Were
these people that were also on the street, or were these...
Yes.
So
yeah.
I see.
There's a huge sex ring in the homeless community that goes around. It's very sick, twisted. But a lot of people don't know that, there are people high up in society that are involved in it too. So
how prevalent is that? Like I'm oblivious to that whole world, right? Because I just am.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I hear you say that, it's hard for me to say, is that just every once in a while a story, or is that... No,
that's a very common occurrence. Like, most of the women that I know have at some point in their life been through that on the streets.
Have been trafficked.
Yeah. Not to the point where they were taken out of the city or the state, but they were forced to perform sexual favors, for money, by either men or women. And they were either they have children and somebody would threaten their children's lives, or they would threaten their lives, so it goes a lot deeper than I think a lot of people can really understand. So whenever I see a sex worker, it breaks my heart.
Sometimes you hear, and I don't subscribe to this thought, but sometimes you'll hear people say, well, in the sex industry, there are a certain percentage of women that want to be there. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, that is true to a point. But it's a very small percentage, I think.
Yeah. Overwhelmingly, people are being coerced into it.
Yeah, yeah. Just like how I was talking about not being aware that they were making me think that was something I want. I think that it's very common that maybe a very sexual oriented person, woman or man, who just likes to have fun and have sex with friends or whatever, they get coerced into into selling themselves, and because they would have had sex anyways, so why not make money doing it?
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes it turns into a forced thing, and it's really unfortunate.
As often is the case, it only takes one person to reach in and help pull someone through when they are in crisis. Dene did have a boyfriend at the time who was there for her when things got really bad.
He was a little bit older than me, and I think that he expected more of me, because he didn't know about everything that I had been through. There were times where, I was really lost and scared, and I would, I would get a hold of him on Facebook and tell him, hey, I'm lost, I'm scared, can you come pick me up? And he'd pick me up, we'd go up to the mountains and spend a few days together up there. Yeah, sobering up and, just getting away from the world.
Wow, that's a beautiful thing to do for a friend, for someone that you cared about, for sure.
Yeah.
At 16, Dene gave birth to her daughter. She knew she was too young to be the mother she wanted to be, and at the same time did not want to give her child up for adoption for fear of losing her completely. Her mother, who now lives in Eastern Washington, agreed to raise her child.
She doesn't know I'm her mom yet, but I hope that I get to know her better and tell her at some point.
How often do you get to see her?
Now that my mom moved to Eastern Washington, I haven't seen her in a while. The year before I had seen her, my friend Jamie took me out there to go see her, and I got to spend a day out there, and she is wonderful, absolutely beautiful, very smart. I remember the look on her face when we rolled up. She was so excited. She ran out there and she sees me in my little jumper outfit, and she's like, oh my gosh, look at you. You look like an artist came straight out of Paris. And I just remember thinking to myself, she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
And that just made me so happy to hear that. She just thinks so highly of me.
Yeah.
And
how are you explained? You're just her...
I'm just her sister.
Yeah, just her sister.
And I think she knows. I really do, because she asked me about that at one point, and she just kind of hinted around it, but didn't directly ask me. And I didn't feel like it was the right time, so I just said, yeah, I'm your sister, And she's like, well, you're the best big sister anybody could have. And that just made my heart...
Your heart must have exploded.
Yeah, I never thought in a million years I'd hear that out of her mouth. So we painted together. I made her a couple paintings and took photos of everything that I made, and then we made paintings together. And I took photos of that. We went swimming. We jumped on a trampoline forever. She put me in my place. I was smoking a cigarette on the trampoline.
Oh.
Yeah.
She told you to knock it off.
Yeah. Smart kid.
Yeah.
I really want to be in my daughter's life. I've neglected that so far, because I know when I was 16 having her, I was definitely not ready.
Did you know that then?
Yeah. I was going to give her up for adoption, but my aunt talked me out of it, I made an agreement with my mom that part of the stipulations was 6 months clean and sober, a minimum, a stable living position, stable living situation, and maintaining a job for a year.
Wow. And
to be
then-
financially stable
then
before
she-
I can have her back in my life
Wow.
like that.
And it feels like it really does feel like you're working towards that.
I think that it's only appropriate that since my life changed in such a drastic way at that age, that
Yeah.
it's about time that I come out to her.
Yeah, let her know.
And, or at least become a more prominent figure in her life
Yeah.
so that I can open that door
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
she's ready, you know. She's so happy and so bright and so... I was so nervous. I didn't know what to say, you know, but she took care of that.
Yeah.
Like, she led the conversation on. And I was worried about my sailor's mouth and, you know, my teeth being messed up, and do I smell bad? Do I look weird? You know, am I sucked up? Like, all these things in my head, and she didn't see any of my flaws that I thought she was going to see right away.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a really great experience for me, and I hope it was for her too.
Yeah. It sounds like it was.
That experience has been my latest muse. That's all I can think about is just a little slice of paradise over there, you know, and I just want to be there so bad. Like every time I think about it, I just imagine, you know, that property is just, it's so perfect, you know, and I just...
Too often, when we judge others, we forget that not everyone starts at the same start line. We can't measure how far someone has come when we don't know how far back they had to start. When I saw you last, which was I think a couple years ago, you were down in Sodo in the RV, and I think you had just found out that you had the kidney failure issues. And can you explain a little bit about that? Because I'm honestly, when I left you that last time, I thought to myself, oh, I might not ever see you again. And you seem so healthy, and I know you probably are still struggling with some of that stuff, but can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was muscling massive amounts of heroin into my thighs and my butt, and had infections regularly, abscesses. The doctors told me that was the cause. It was I had sudden renal failure due to excessive continuous exposure to infection. And that makes sense to me because, you know, your kidneys that's your filter, you know, and I was peeing out completely clear pee, which is, people think that's a good thing. No, it's not. That means that all the toxins in my body that I should have been peeing out are not being peed out. I'm still retaining all of them.
Your kidneys weren't filtering it.
Yeah, so my kidneys had 8% functionality at the time, and I was bedridden for about 6 months. I couldn't walk by myself. I had to have a friend help me go to the bathroom every day. Anytime I had to move, I couldn't even lift a blanket with my legs, you know? I was so weak. And we were homeless, so he would put a trash can down and put a bag in it, and then help me stand up, pull my pants down, sit on the trash can, go to the bathroom, you know, tie it up, throw it out, and help me lay back down.
Wow.
But I was peeing on myself regularly because of my legs being swollen, so he'd have to help me change my clothes and all that other stuff. So I was basically a big baby.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah.
And
A sick big baby.
yeah, I'm eternally grateful for Will for that. He really helped me through that, and Jamie.
Yeah. But you didn't quit heroin use, so how did you come out of it?
Yeah, so I kept using for a long time through that, about 6 months of that, and then Will said, Dene, your infection is bad. I can smell it from here. I cannot stand it anymore, and I'm scared you're going to die. You need to go to the hospital. So I went. When they told me that I had kidney failure, I was shocked. I didn't think that there was that much wrong with me. But then I started thinking about it, and all the pains that I had in my lower back, right where my kidneys were, I would always have this, and twitch, and it was, it was like somebody stabbing me in the back, in my kidneys.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why. I remember thinking I thought there was something wrong with my kidneys. I brushed it off. So, turns out I was right. And, yeah.
So when you heard that news, did you really cut back on your use?
Yeah, for a little bit I did. And then after I started going to my doctors regularly, and they said, look, we're not going to help you unless if you help yourself. We're not going to put the effort into helping you unless you help yourself, because we regularly deal with drug addicts that we help and then they just fuck it all up and then they die.
Yep.
And we don't want to feel like we did something wrong. So you help yourself and we'll help you.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I got on methadone and I quit shooting heroin. I relapsed on the Perk 30s that have been going around.
Perk 30s?
Yeah, the blue pills.
Oh, the fentanyl pills.
Yeah.
The ones that you smoke on a little aluminum tinfoil.
Yeah, I relapsed on that and was smoking that for a while, but it made me sick, like coughing up nasty shit. And so I switched to fentanyl powder. Like, my use has always been extremely high. Like, I honestly use more than anybody I know when I use, So, and I've only overdosed the first time I ever did it. So I was a very safe user, but I used an excessive amount, always.
Of the fentanyl or?
Anything I used, yeah.
But Dene, I know you know this. There's lots of information about how deadly the fentanyl powder is.
Yeah. I think that, the fentanyl powder has been, I've lost a lot of people. I've lost about 15 or 16 friends over the past year to fentanyl powder.
But you're not taking any fentanyl now.
No.
And are you on methadone still?
No.
So you're completely clean.
Yeah.
That wasn't good enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dene, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you.
It feels good to feel things again, My kidneys have 25% functionality, which is a huge improvement from 8.
Yeah. And will the kidneys continue to improve?
No. The doctor told me that it's not like your liver, where your liver can repair itself, Your kidneys, when you do damage to them, typically it's done. He said I'll probably be on dialysis at some point in my life, but it's going to be way down the road.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm happy to know that I'm not going to be on dialysis anytime soon.
Yeah. And also that you're alive.
Yeah. Because I was upset about not being able to be a figure in my daughter's life.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get my teeth fixed soon because I'm sick and tired of being in pain, and they look horrendous.
And is there a program to help you with that?
I'm not sure about that. I've been looking into it. I have heard that there's a couple schools that will do work on your teeth if you allow students to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little concerned about the idea of that because they're students, but I don't have the finances to provide or to be able to afford that, so I'm willing to take a chance.
Yeah.
I need my whole mouth redone pretty much because all of my teeth are falling apart.
Yeah.
And I've got multiple missing teeth. And it's due to not brushing my teeth because when I was 15, I got my tooth knocked out, hit in the face with a wrench. And it cracked about 5 or 6 of my teeth altogether, but broke out my middle one, and that's where it started. So every time I brushed my teeth, it was really sensitive, and then a tooth would break off because of it, and so I was scared to brush my teeth anymore because of it, so I stopped doing it completely, hoping to preserve my teeth. And I know it sounds weird, but that's what my logical thing was. And drugs kind
don't
of
help.
Yeah, drugs kind of don't help, and having a dry mouth also, there's a number of reasons, but I'm hoping to get that fixed if I can. That would help, I think, a lot with my self-esteem, being able to integrate back into society. It's hard for me to be able to look for a job, because I want to do something where I'm like, I would like to be a waitress or housekeeping and stuff like that. But when people see my teeth, they automatically are like, ugh,
Judgment.
They're like, what the fuck is wrong with this bitch, And so it's a turnoff instantly, and it gives me a hard time trying to find a legitimate job.
What kind of work are you doing?
So I do like a little bit of everything. I've done landscaping, I do housekeeping, I've done delivery driving,
Yeah.
Just anything and everything I can in order to make money that doesn't involve selling my body.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like a really good step for you. I mean, honestly, to be having employment and starting to feel like, you can bring income in.
Yeah. Right now I need I lost everything I owned this year, like 3 times over. Like, my Pontiac got towed with most of what I had, and then my GMC got stolen, with almost everything, including my dad's photos and everything that I owned that belonged to my dad besides his wallet, which that's all I have left of him, is his wallet.
That is so frustrating.
Yeah, and I worked really hard for everything I had,
Yeah.
And it's not much, but it's mine.
Yeah.
And the city's doing that a lot to people, especially homeless people. There's a lot of homeless people that actually work legitimate jobs, and people don't know that, but it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a group of homeless people that steal and whatever, but that's not all of them. And so for the city or anybody else to just walk in and say, you can't have this anymore
It's
because
crazy.
you don't deserve it, is messed up.
And people that are, my experience has been that people on the street fight so hard to save a few of the things they have from their past. And it's so hard when everything gets wet, when things get swept, when things get stolen, or even drug addiction, they get lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's really
there's precious
tragic.
Yeah, there's precious things that I had that I will never get back, and it sounds ridiculous because it's just stuff, but that stuff matters to me,
Where do you think you are on your journey of recovering from all the things that have happened to you? Are you in a good place?
I think I'm starting to understand where I'm supposed to be. I can't wait to get off the streets. I know that there's a lot. The city is moving forward with trying to get all the homeless into housing, and that's something I'm really excited for. I've also heard that they're not giving housing anymore, and that they're starting to do shelters again, which, if that's the case, I really am scared. I don't want to be in a shelter.
Why don't you want to be in a shelter?
It's an environment that I feel I would be eaten up in, because homeless people can be very much so like a pack of wolves or coyotes, they're just, and especially when you're a young, cute woman by yourself, you get eaten up really fast. You get played, you get, there's a lot of women, believe it or not, that are in the homeless community that will try to recruit young, cute women to be sex workers. and they befriend them and take them into a hotel and give them drugs and money and all this stuff. And then they say, okay, well, now you have to pay for it.
Wow.
And you don't have the money, so what are you going to do? And then a guy gets involved, and that's how that starts. I also want to, I'd like to be a foster mom at some point, to help stop the problem before it starts.
Yeah.
In the future for other people, because I feel like with my life experiences, I can not only relate to children that have been through that or have been abused sexually or physically, emotionally, whatever. I can relate. I understand. I feel like I can help people,
They talk about like lots of different, they didn't used to talk this way, but when they talk about people being smart, now they talk about people being smart in lots of different ways. And you seem actually smart in a number of ways, but you seem emotionally smart, like almost like your life experiences have kind of given you a broader perspective. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely. Because as weird and sick as it is, I can empathize with anybody, really. Even the people that are so sick that they abuse children, I can somewhat empathize with them, because if you're sexually attracted to something, you cannot help that. I understand that. But going through with that with a child is sick and wrong, So, and people don't understand why I say I can empathize with that, but, being through it kind of helps me with that, I think. I know it sounds weird, but...
No, I subscribe to something similar that, we're here to love everybody, and everybody got to where they are through their own variables and own circumstances and their own genetic pool. And that doesn't like let people off the kind of the responsibility hook. And there is this weird gap in there, in that in my believing that we're responsible for our actions, but at the same time we're also such a product of how we were raised and what our makeup is, and it's a really difficult thing to get your head around.
Yeah, and I think when people talk about sympathy and empathy, I think people confuse the two a lot, The difference between sympathy and empathy is sympathizing for someone is like feeling bad for them, right? But empathy is different. It's understanding where the person's coming from, not from your perspective, but from theirs, through their life experience. So truly putting yourself in their shoes and giving them essentially the benefit of the doubt that, there is a reason why they are the way they are. And trying to understand that reason, I think, helps a lot with getting through emotional trauma and sexual abuse and things like that, I'm still definitely in those, in the healing process, but I would say I'm just about ready to overcome that. But I feel like you never truly overcome it, It's going to be a part of me and the way that I am for the rest of my life, and I know that. It affects every decision that I make when it comes to people and interactions that I have with them. I'm a lot less likely to do certain things that, most people would think, why not? Because I don't want to be made a victim, and I see people put themselves out there in dangerous positions all the time. And when I was young, I didn't understand what I was doing, but I put myself in the position regularly when I was young because I was repeating that cycle. And it's a subconscious thing that you do to deal with trauma. And I know it sounds crazy and it doesn't make sense, but that's sometimes what ends up happening. Either somebody that's been abused becomes an abuser, or they continue to experience that abuse over and over and over again.
Yeah.
In their future interactions.
Yep. It oddly becomes comfortable or normal.
Yeah, definitely. And like when I was, 13 and 14, I was sleeping with men in their 40s. Like like there was nothing wrong with that. And I didn't realize that there was something wrong with them for finding a 12 or 13-year-old girl sexually attractive. I didn't, it's not something wrong with them. I didn't mean that, but that there was something wrong with that relationship that I was having with these men because they were much too old for me and I was still a kid.
Yeah.
Making very adult decisions. I don't regret any of it, but it definitely, I feel like if I can help people, if we could try to help people prevent that for themselves, or for their children or their grandchildren or their nieces or nephews or whatever, maybe we can start to see, some positive results. Yeah.
And you said something else that I think is really interesting is that, yes, it centers on mental health, but you can't just haul everybody into the hospital for their mental health, like if somebody's bleeding out or has a heart attack, right? So it also feels like our society needs to learn to have bandwidth to allow people to be having mental health issues and waiting for them to come to it, loving them, providing for them, trying to create the stepping stones for them to where they say to themselves, I need to get help with this. Would that be accurate?
I would look at it like a rescue. Like if you see an animal that's been, rescued, like maybe a pit bull that was in a fighting ring or whatever, that animal is going to be very timid and very scared and probably aggressive and probably food aggressive and they're not going to like you at first, but if you take the time and get to know them and respect their boundaries and respect that they've been starved out and let them let them be them but still be there for them, they will come around and they will start to love you. And I feel like then the healing can start.
Yeah. Dene, that is so beautiful. I'm actually, it's just like, that's the society that we want, right? I mean, where we can do that for each other. Like, we can see that hurt and pain and say, whoa, you need space, you need our love, you need time, and we're gonna be there for you.
Yeah.
Right? We would do that for an animal that needs rescuing. It's hard to comprehend why we're not doing that for each other.
Definitely. Like, I've always looked at society and homelessness as us versus them, but I've kind of come to a realization over the past couple of years that it shouldn't be us versus them. It should be us as we together, and like until we can figure out how to set aside our differences, stop victim shaming, quit pushing shit under the rug and actually talk about things, sexual abuse awareness and prevention, harm prevention. All these things are really progressive, things that should be utilized and they should be put to use because they're there. And there's plenty of platforms to be able to express yourself about, issues you may be having at home, social media and stuff like that. You could talk about these things, if you're, let's say, a single parent and you just started dating for the first time, since you had kids, maybe talk to your kids about the dangers of men or women that they may bring into the house. This is a possibility, and that if you see any signs, let me know, because until we do that, you're just setting yourself up for failure. The way that the system works right now is just, it doesn't work. It's broken, and I feel like there's a lot of things that people could do and should do. in
And it
order
begins
to,
with talking.
yeah, and that's it.
Somehow, through all of the trauma, Dene has found a beautiful way to share about her journey. It's clear she does this not only for her own healing, but also out of a desire to help others, to be a voice for those struggling through similar experiences. She wants all of us to just talk about it, to make it normal to talk about difficult things.
When I was 7, that's the first time I experienced it. And I didn't know what to think, you know? I just knew that this was kind of weird. And this is a father figure to me. So how can I know that this is a wrong thing? Because he's supposed to protect me. He's supposed to love me like a daughter. And he's not. He's loving me much more than that, you know? And it's not okay. And I didn't go through sex ed until almost middle school, fifth grade. So by that point, it had already gone on for years, you know, and I was already conditioned to think that this was acceptable behavior and didn't think that I had to change. And then when I went to my first sex ed class, I remember thinking to myself, so all these things that I was experiencing my whole childhood was like a really inappropriate thing that should not be going on by any means. And I should have told somebody, you know, and because I remember asking in the middle of class, you know, what's the difference between rape and molestation? And I got in trouble.
You wait a minute. You got in trouble for asking that question?
Yeah, I got sent to the principal's office. I was so confused, and everybody was laughing, and you know, because they thought it was funny that I was in trouble. And at that time, it just felt like, this is a genuine question. I'm confused. And if I'm going through something like this, I need to know what exactly this is. But they never sent me to a counselor. There was nobody took a second look at it. Like, it was just like, okay, you're acting out, kid. Now sit down and, you know, be quiet. I put myself in a very vulnerable position, and that was the very first time that I had been shamed publicly for being a victim, right? Not directly being shamed for that, but and you know, it felt like I was, and it definitely. I don't think that was right. There should have been a more understanding approach to it, and instead of like making it a bad thing that I'm bad, maybe explaining to the class like, well, that's a, you know, really good question, you know, it's kind of a lot, but we can handle that right now, you know, I got you. Nobody, you know, stops and goes, you know, hey, maybe we should make these kids aware before it ever gets that far.
It is common for folks experiencing trauma in their youth to then have issues later on in life, such as homelessness. I asked Dene if she felt there was a direct connection for her with the struggles she has experienced. Did that experience, would you say, directly led to your drug abuse and then homelessness?
Yeah, definitely. Very much so directly. Like, that's why I ended up homeless.
Yeah.
As a result of being homeless and being scared at 13 or 12 or whatever it was, you know, I would use meth to stay awake as long as humanly possible so that I couldn't be abused in my sleep anymore. And then I got delusional and crazy, and so then I started using heroin so I could sleep. And I've got a sleeping disorder that, you know, causes me to scream and cry in my sleep all the time. You know, my boyfriend wakes me up, you know, a few nights a week for sure, you know, because I'm crying or screaming or punching him or, you know, all sorts of kinds of crazy stuff. And this is all directly related, I feel, to those experiences. And people just don't realize how deep that really goes.
Recently, Dene lost her biological father due to an overdose of fentanyl.
My dad died about 4 months ago.
This is your
My biological
dad.
Yeah. He was always good to me, but he was a little physically abusive. He did hit me a lot, when I was a kid, and he was very temperamental because he struggled with addiction himself. I didn't realize that till I was much older, but he was outcasted by his family as well as me, so we were both treated very similarly, but he struggles with religion and stuff. He was so lost, and I just felt so bad for him because I'm comfortable with where I'm at. I'm comfortable with who I am. I know who I am. But my dad was in his 60s and still didn't know who he was or what he was trying to do. And he was so confused. He was like a child.
There have been so many difficult emotional moments in Dene's life, ones that overlap onto each other. I know she juggles feelings of guilt and shame, not just for the actions in her own life, but also in most of the others around her as well.
I wouldn't have gone home with my dad. I would have forced him to go to treatment.
Yeah.
So that he could still be here, and I would have done what he wanted to do, which is go to meetings with him and become a positive influence in his life, because I was so focused on my own shit. I was being selfish, and I truly do feel somewhat responsible for his death. I wanted him so badly to take my daughter camping and to take her fishing and do all those things that we did when I was growing up that I loved to do. She'll never get to experience that with him now, and it breaks my heart. And then I found out that my daughter's dad had overdosed as well and died about 2 months ago.
Wow, Dene, I'm so sorry.
So
Yeah.
he kind of just disappeared, and I had no idea what was going on with him. I know he went to prison for a little bit. I wasn't one of his emergency contacts, so when he was in the hospital, he was in a coma, I guess, in the ICU after overdosing. I wanted to go see him, but I couldn't without a COVID test proving that I didn't have COVID. So I thought I would have a little more time than 3 days before he passed, but I didn't. So I didn't even get to say goodbye, which was kind of hard, but it is what it is.
As Dene said, it is what it is. Dene is trying hard to get back to the starting line where she can move her life forward. She is actively working on herself and trying to find secure employment, as she says, one with a W-2. Above all, she hopes to be a part of her daughter's life, to be there for her as a positive figure, to be that person she never had. Where does your drive come from, do you think? Because, I know you want to I know you're holding your daughter up as this goal to say, I'm gonna get my life right, and I'm gonna get back to her. Can you talk a little bit about that? How are you doing this? Because honestly, from the outside looking in, it's pretty amazing what you're doing. Holding it all together, with your health, the addiction that you've dropped, navigating. I don't know how you navigate this stuff, honestly. And I'm wondering, how do you do that?
I'm just figuring it out as I go along, because these are things I've never done before. Like getting a job, that's not something I've done before. Like an official job. I've always done like odd jobs for people.
Right.
I need to have that W-2, and that was a realization that I came to over the last year. I think it's not so much like my daughter as it is like just setting shit right for me, because like I feel I hold like a lot of guilt on my shoulders for like failing my daughter the last thing I want for her is for her to feel like she wasn't good enough, because she is more than good enough. She's perfect. And I'm fucked up for not being able to see that she deserved better than what I was able to give at the time. That I feel like there could have been something, really great that could have been out there for her, and there still is,
So,
but I just want to be a part of that journey for her. And I'm just so honored to have the opportunity to be able to redeem myself. Like, the ultimate goal is to get to know her and to tell her who I am, because she doesn't know yet. So when the time comes, like, that I do, like, that's going to be a big deal for me, because I've always been kind of like a coward as far as facing difficult, things. I've always kind of like been less assertive, about things. And this is something that's going to be a big deal for me, taking responsibility for my failures and for my accomplishments.
hope you're not too hard on yourself. You've been through a lot.
Right. But I see so many people that have been through just as much as I have, and right now they're doing what I should have done, years ago. And so I know it could have been done then, and I chose not to, because I was being exactly what I really don't like to admit I am, but I was being the coward that I was, And I've grown since then, and I've become stronger, and I don't feel that fear anymore. So
Happy for you.
yeah.
And I want to say from the outside, I don't see any of the coward of you. I really don't. I'm actually pretty amazed by you, by your strength. So I mean that.
Thank you.
We began this episode with a question, asking, why have we not ended homelessness? To answer that question, to answer it truthfully, we need to know, are we wanting to end homelessness so that we, the housed, are not impacted by it? Or do we want to end it so that the folks experiencing it will no longer suffer? Those are two very different reasons. The former looks for solutions to address the symptoms of homelessness with little consideration for those struggling through it. The latter dives deeper into the reasons for homelessness in an effort to address root causes, focusing on the specific needs and barriers of the homeless. Both approaches cost lots of money. There is no way around that. We can continue to spend funds sweeping the issue under the rug, or we can decide to earnestly invest in our communities by addressing the core issues of those struggling. Ending homelessness begins with each of us understanding why we want homelessness to end. Are we doing it for ourselves or for the homeless? It's an important distinction. You Know Me Now is produced, written, and edited by Tomas Bernatsky and me, Rex Holbein. We would like to thank Dene for graciously and courageously sharing her story, allowing us to get to know her just a little bit more. You Know Me Now has a Facebook and Instagram page where you can join in on the conversation. We also have a website at www.youknowmenow.com, where you can see photos of Dene, as well as read other stories of folks we feel you should know. Thanks for listening.